When news of the destruction of Jericho and Ai spread throughout Canaan, many of the cities came together to form alliances for protection against Israel. But when the city of Gibeon learned of the destruction of Jericho, they came up with a cunning plan. They gathered old sacks and hung them upon their donkeys. And then the men, dressed in torn and tattered clothes and worn sandals, they gathered provisions that were dried out and some of it moldy. And in that condition, they marched into the camp of Joshua. They said, "We have traveled a great distance. Our elders have sent us here to form an alliance with you." Joshua looked at them and said, "But who are you? Where are you from?" "Oh, we have traveled from afar. Why, look at our clothes, how torn and tattered it is. And this bread, it was warm when we took it from the oven, and now it's dried out and some of it moldy." The leaders of Israel listened to their story, and they looked at their provisions, and they believed what they saw and what they heard. And then, without consulting God, they formed an alliance with these men. Now, several days later, Joshua learned that he had not formed an alliance with people from afar, but with his neighbors, Gibeon. He called the men back to his camp and he said, "Why did you lie to me? Why the deception?" And they said, "We knew that Moses had granted all of this land to you with the command that you were to destroy anyone living here. We know that now you have to decide what is right for you, and we will abide with your decision." Joshua did not have any of the men killed, but he did turn them into slaves for Israel. They had to haul water and hew the wood and work in the house of the Lord. Now, when the neighboring kings learned of this alliance between Israel and Gibeon, they became greatly frightened, for Gibeon was a large city and its men were powerful warriors. They decided that they would merge their armies and they would march against Gibeon. The city then sent a message to Joshua saying, "Do not desert your servants. Come, help us according to our alliance." Now the Lord God told Joshua, "Don't worry about those kings. I have already delivered them to you. When this battle is over, not one of them will be left standing." And so Joshua and his army marched throughout the night, and they issued a surprise attack upon the enemy. God created great confusion that they were turning against themselves, and many of them fell to the swords of the Israelites. He then sent a fierce hailstorm which killed more of the enemy than the Israelite swords. Joshua needed more time to complete the battle, and so he stood up before Israel where everyone could see him and hear him, and he gave the command, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon, halt in the valley of Ajalon." And so it was, in the mid-heavens the sun stood still and made no rush to set that day. Now Joshua returned to his camp, and there he learned that 5 of the kings were hiding in terror in a nearby cave. He gave the order that the cave should be sealed with large rocks and a guard stand there that no one escaped. And then Joshua went back to the battle, where he inflicted great harm upon the enemy until none of them were left standing. He then gave the order, "Remove the stones from the cave and bring the kings to my camp." When the kings were brought there, Joshua called forth the leaders of his army, and he said, "Subdue these men, put your feet upon their necks." And then he told his men, "Don't be afraid. Don't be dismayed, but rather act bold and with courage. For the Lord God has said that all of our enemies will end thus." And then he gave the command to have the 5 kings executed. And after that, Joshua led his army from city to city to city, and everywhere that they went, God gave him victory.